Here at the Canadian Club, we have always been a forum for public figures, thought leaders, and decision makers to share their ideas and inform the most relevant and compelling conversations of our time.
We are dedicated to encouraging debate on the issues that matter to this city, this province, and this country.
The Canadian Club is one of the most important podiums anywhere in the world that a Canadian can speak to, tell Canadians what it is that they think, develop those thoughts. And so I want to thank you for that very, very much.
Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists today.
Through our programs and events, including our youth and young leaders programs, our diversity partnerships, our joint events, and our media and social media opportunities, we offer you access to dynamic political, social, and business figures from abroad and right here at home.
The platform from which the eloquence of Canada has flowed all of that time, whether it be business, education, politics, sports, arts, and culture. If someone wants to say something to Canadians about this country and about the future of this country, this is the venue you choose.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Joseph Lowe, President of Canadian Club Toronto, and I'm delighted to be your host today. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land, which we all call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility to improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. We're grateful for the opportunity to be able to come together and learn on this land. Guests, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you to our AV partners, Van Valkenburg Communications and LiveMeeting.ca, for making it all possible on this digital platform. Project 8 is working to establish a professional Canadian women's soccer league, solidifying Canada as a global leader in sport and gender equality. Today, we'll hear about how the new league will be taking shape leading into 2025, including its business model, and why it's such a significant opportunity for Canada right now. Just before we hear from our panel guests, I'd like to take a few moments to just go over some housekeeping. So to ask a question, click the question tab that you'll find on the right-hand side of your screen, and these questions will be funneled to the moderator. If you need help or technical support at any time, you'll find a help button on the bottom right-hand corner of the page as well. I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor today, Canadian Tire, for helping to make this event possible. And thank you, as always, to our season sponsor, Canadian Bankers Association, for its ongoing support. Canadian Club is a nonprofit, and we've been gathering people together for 125 years. And it's because of our sponsors, partners, and members like yourselves that we continue to be able to do so. So thank you, everyone, for your support. And finally, another tradition that our club has maintained is a toast that we make to our country. So if you have a beverage close by, please join me in a toast to Canada. Canada. Now it's my pleasure to turn things over to Kim Saunders, Vice President, ESG, Community and Sport Partnerships, Canadian Tire Corporation, to introduce our speakers of the day. Over to you, Kim.
Thank you, Joseph, and thank you, Canadian Club Toronto, for hosting this amazing panel. I am extremely honored to be here today. At Canadian Tire Corporation, we are on a journey to be as responsible a retailer as we possibly can be, and that ensures that all of our actions have impact and are relevant to Canadians. We live every day with one purpose in mind, and that's that we are here to make life in Canada better. One of the ways we're doing this is through our vision to have a long-standing commitment to supporting equity and inclusion in sport in this country. On March 6th, we announced our Women in Sport initiative, which is a multi-million-dollar commitment to championing gender equity in sport. By 2026, a minimum of 50% of our total sponsorship dollars will be directed to women's professional sport. Our commitment to the sports system in Canada has always focused on the journey from playground to podium, and so we're thrilled to now add that final step towards the professional arena for the country's leading female athletes. This journey is important not only to ensure that Canadians have the chance to play the sport they love in their home country, but to ensure that we stay a global leader in sport. As part of this commitment, Canadian Tire is proud to be a founding partner of Project 8, the first women's soccer league in Canada. This initiative is not only exciting and timely, it is critical to creating the sports system we all want to see and that our female athletes deserve. Women's sport has long dominated the medal count, and it's time that Canadian business leaders, we step up and give them the opportunity for long-standing professional careers. But you didn't all join today to hear from me, so let me get on to introducing the real heroes and the panelists today, the best people to lead this discussion, the founders of Project 8. From 2003 to 2020, Diana Matheson made Canada proud as a member of our national women's soccer team. Her talents on the pitch have been showcased at the FIFA Women's World Cup, as well as an impressive number of medals at the Pan Am Games and Summer Olympics. She is the co-founder and CEO of Project 8, an inspiration, a true leader, and it is an honor to be by her side on this journey. Joining Diana is her esteemed business partner, Thomas Gilbert, who for over a decade has been building strategy and operations that launch initiatives that provide solutions that are innovative and challenging what the status quo has been. Thomas's desire to achieve excellence, development, and growth is going to be a driving force behind Project 8's success. And our moderator today is the incredible Kate Beirness. Kate gained national attention as one half of TSN Sports Center's first ever female anchor team. In her over a decade as a broadcaster, she's provided coverage for the Olympic Games, the FIFA Women's World Cup, the Grey Cup, and she's currently the sideline reporter for the Toronto Raptors broadcast and host of Thursday Night Football. Kate, I am pleased to turn this discussion over to you.
Kim, thank you so much for the introduction, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here today with Diana and Thomas. Although both of you promised you'd be bringing mimosas, and I saw coffee cups right off the hop here, so I don't know how this discussion is going to go.
You don't know what's in here.
You know what, you're right, and that's just a smart thing. That Diana and I have worked together in the past on the FIFA Women's World Cup, so it's an honor to be here with both of you, though, and also quickly for Kim. A lot of us were aware of that announcement back on March the 6th, and we'll get into this in the discussion a little later on. But a lot of the companies that we speak with, they always say that they want to invest in women. Oh, we'd love to be part of an initiative, but then to actually take action and do it. I can't tell you from a female broadcaster, knowing a lot of the female athletes, what it means to be doing this as a whole and actually putting pen to paper and actually cutting a check. So thank you very much to what Canadian Tire is doing for women and women in sports. All right, Diana, Thomas, now some hard-hitting questions. We heard a little bit of an overview of Project 8 there, but let's just give a Cole's notes. Let's just go back in time here and explain why this all started. Diana, I'll start with you, and then Thomas, I'll add in how you got involved. But Diana, and I've seen you over the years kind of come up with this, and now finally bringing it to fruition is something special. But just explain the why. Why did you do this in the first place?
Well, the why I think was easy for me on this one. Obviously, played for the national team for a couple decades, and we've known, as players in the program, the only thing that's been missing in Canadian women's soccer has been the professional game. We have obviously done exceptionally well on the international side. Our grassroots is really, really strong, third largest player pool in the world. But we've just had this huge gap when it comes to, post-secondary education, that there was just an absence of any professional game. So my generation, the generation still spend our careers playing abroad. We go to the US, we go to Europe to play our pro football in the, over 24 pro leagues around the world. But then when I retired, I came back and I'm like, oh, I finally get to move home. And I looked around and there were still no jobs for me here in professional soccer and professional sport. So just decided to build some jobs for ourselves so I could stay in Canada. That's really the why at the end of the day.
I just decided to build a league because, that's what we currently do. So Thomas, tell me, how did you then get involved with Diana when she came up with this mastermind plan to finally bring a professional league to our country?
Absolutely, yeah. So Diana and I met through our executive MBA at the Smith School of Business, which we started in August of 2021. It's a team-based program, so there were 7 of us on a team here in Toronto. And I think from day one, Diana introduced herself as, she's going to start a women's professional league in Canada. So over the course of that year, I got to, hear bits and pieces, and I got to learn more about the project and the aspiration. And I think, you know, as we've seen with so many people that we've spoken to, this is the kind of project that, you know, if you're asked to be involved, you really can't say no. And why would you want to? So in June of 2022, Diana asked me if I'd like to partner with her on this. And, you know, there's no world in which I could have said no to that. It's such an important project. And I think this is the future of sport in Canada. So, you know, it's a great opportunity.
You know, when it comes to women's leagues too, and I know particularly when it comes to, let's say, the WNBA, I mean, I feel like these leagues have been around for just so many years, but they're still struggling at this point in time. I mean, to take on an initiative like this, I think is absolutely commendable. And I do agree that in this country, especially with the success of the national team, it's completely viable. But what were the first things that you guys had to do when you decided, okay, we're going to build this league? Like, where do you even start, Diana? What's even step number one to get to where you currently are?
Yeah, I mean, Tom and I set out not just to build a league, but we've gone the, you know, build from scratch entrepreneurial route. So we're building a business as we build a league. I think the fact that there was nothing in Canada is, of course, a challenge. But to be honest, it's been a strength, because it means there's a blank slate in this country right now with a really strong women's soccer talent pool, a really strong fan base, really positive cultural attitudes towards sport, and a blank slate to look around the world to see what's worked in the past, to see what hasn't worked, to see what the current trends in our sport, and apply all the best practices here, which, you know, if we'd already had things in place, that would have been more challenging. So when I retired as an athlete, I went back to school, as Tom said, did our executive MBA together. I was also in some UEFA programming, so the European soccer body. I did some education through that, and everything I was learning through those courses, I was just applying to a Canadian landscape and saying, will this work here? Won't this work here? So I came out of that with a good idea of, you know, this is the competition format, and these are the revenue streams that will work in Canada. And then once I talked Tom into joining me, then we started out we know where we're going, what's the strategy here, and what's actually the business model and the financials. And we started building those out. And then our first step was to go find the investors, the team owners, the companies that we knew believed in this thing as much as we do. Because there's something about this that isn't selling every company out there. It's finding the companies that already believe in this, because they do, and then are in a position where they have incredible women like Kim and Ashley from Canadian Tire who are able to make these deals happen. So like, we've gone after the people who are already behind this. And right now in this country, in this market, there are so many people that are behind this, and it's just a matter of us getting in front of them.
I think we can all agree with that. Thomas, when you think back to the beginning of all of this, what were one of the biggest, maybe some of the biggest challenges that Project 8 faced?
I know personally that I think one of the biggest challenges was the offside rule for me.
Hold on, you didn't play footy?
I'll play it.
It'll been a while, yeah.
No, we spent, and sorry, like Tom's like, okay, if we're going to do this, he didn't play soccer. So he said, like, I need to know the sport better than anyone. So we actually spent an hour a day for probably the first 6 weeks, where we were like, this is soccer 101. Here's FIFA, like, these are the rules. And yeah, we started from there.
She's a great teacher though, isn't she, Thomas? Honestly, that woman taught me more in the World Cup than I've ever learned in my entire life.
Yeah, it was great. It was very helpful. I mean, I think the way that we approached it was really sort of formulaic. We started with a lot of research. We wanted to make sure that we had a really clear understanding of the sport landscape broadly, and you know, soccer's it's a global sport, right? So there are a lot of better practices that we can draw on all around the world. You know, we made sure that from day one we had a really clear understanding of what the roadmap needed to be, what the, you know, financial models that we needed to work off of, what they needed to look like, and how we wanted to approach this. So, I mean, when we talk about the biggest challenges that we faced, I mean, it's been a surprisingly, and you know, knock on wood, it's been a surprisingly smooth road so far, where, you know, we really laid out a strategy early on and a plan, and we're just sticking to the plan.
Let's talk about the strategy here. So Diana, I know you've expressed this to a lot of people before of what the plan is going forward, but obviously partners are a huge portion of this. You obviously have your founding partners already. but in terms of teams as well. And when you announced you had 2 teams, where does that currently stand, and how do you see that moving forward?
Yeah, and you nailed it. The priorities through the rest of the year. Well, there's actually 3. We're applying for league membership with Canada Soccer. So that's coming up in early May, where we hopefully get to check a big box, get the Canada Soccer stamp of approval that this will be the league that operates in Canada for Tier 1 of women's soccer. Sell the rest of our partnerships. The league is selling up to 8 league level partnerships, which, Tom said we're looking at best practice around the world. We modeled that off of the UEFA Europa League and how they run it. And that's been fantastic. And then, teams are, there's no league without teams. And we've given ourselves the fairly aggressive timeline, I think, of having all 8 teams secured by the end of this year. But there's something about continuing the momentum around this and continuing to generate the excitement that we think that's the right timeline, where when we secure that, all the teams will then have a year plus to build their own operations. And kickoff is 2025. We're looking for 4 teams in the East, 4 teams in the West. That's really important for our competition format. You said it, we started with Vancouver, Calgary. Tom and I probably aren't allowed to tease anything too much, but we are hoping to have a 3rd team locked in and maybe announced prior to the AGM in Canada Soccer. And then we've got good interest in many markets across Canada. And then the route it's going is, most of men's sport is kind of one rich, older, white, usually man who owns a sport team. And we knew from the beginning that's not the model we wanted. And if we went after the first 8 people who wanted to own a sport team in Canada, it would probably be someone that looked like that. So we've really intentionally gone about trying to find ownership groups, women as part of this ownership, and finding the people that are connected to their communities across Canada.
That's so awesome. I mean, you look at the NWSL too, and you see female ownership coming in, right? Serena Williams of the bunch, and I agree. In Canada too, we have enough powerful women. Not that it has to be women too, but as it said, like Thomas, you're obviously one of those people who are a man who believes in women's initiatives. We always say that you need both sides of it. Oh my gosh, we have some great questions coming in. I don't want to burst your bubble, but we did just get. What about Ryan Reynolds? Have you contacted Ryan Reynolds yet?
Listen, we've been trying to get to Ryan Reynolds before Ryan Reynolds was cool. It turns out he has like 37 tiers of people you have to get through first. To be fair, he seems pretty busy, with the Wrexham team men and women now, and he's trying to buy the Sens. But yeah, we'd love him to be part, buy the Sens.
Yeah.
On a women's soccer team in Ottawa, we're fine.
I love this. Thomas, just to go back to the 2 initial owners, so Vancouver and Calgary, what encourages you about those 2 ownership groups, and why do you think those were the first 2?
I think, in Vancouver, it was a really easy decision. I'm coming into the space when I started saying, who's been supporting, women's soccer in Canada. The first name that came up, and he's going to hate me for saying this, but the first name that came up was Greg Kerfoot. And the first conversation we had with him, he said, like, there's no world in which we're not part of this. And so I think that was sort of a no-brainer for them and for us. And with the hiring of Steph Labbe, there was momentum there already. So it just made sense. And then, the second, the Calgary Foothills, they actually came to Diana and they said, if you're doing this, we will be part of it. Like there's no world in which, this is going to happen without us. So I think in both cases, like it was really, we found or we were connected with, the folks who are really driving this forward in this country. And that was them.
By the way, we're loving these audience questions. So they're coming in hot right now. Please, if you do have a question for Diana or Thomas, keep them coming. Our next question is, what cities do you think will embrace Project 8 the most, Diana?
Oh, great question.
Good question. Great question.
Yeah. And I'll kind of tell you where we're looking to begin with. We know we want to be in, population centers. We saw in the NWSL, a lot of the US League teams that went, outside of the cities into the suburbs, you cap out at about 4,000 fans and it's hard to grow above that. So we knew we wanted to be in Canadian centers. Infrastructure is a huge piece. One of our major challenges in Canada is a lack of soccer-specific infrastructure. So we do have to go towards where stadiums exist or where they could be built. Small size ones, 6,000 to 8,000, ideal. So we're looking on Vancouver Island soccer stadium. We've got Vancouver, we've got Calgary. Looking at a Saskatoon or Winnipeg market. We'd love to be in the prairies to start. We want this to be a truly Canadian league. Probably 2 in Ontario to start, 1 or 2 in Quebec. And then we love the idea of a Maritimes market as well. Where they're do well. I mean, I feel like some of the smaller markets are actually some of the ones that could really do really, really well. I mean, Halifax already has really embraced the Wanderers in the CPL. I think markets like that love sport, but there's not, they're not already oversaturated, would be a great one. I think a team in Saskatoon would do really well. My fiance, I hadn't been to Saskatchewan because I never really played soccer there until about 4 years ago. My partner's parents are from Saskatchewan, so I go there about 2-3 times a year now. I think Saskatoon, a team there, would do incredibly well, but we'll see if we can get an owner there.
I couldn't agree more. I think Saskatoon, I mean, you go to a Rush game and you think, sorry, they're getting off topic at this point. No, I couldn't agree more. And also too, when it comes to Halifax, it's interesting that you speak of stadiums and not compare leagues in the country. But with the CFL, for example, one of the hurdles that they can't get over is the fact that they don't have a stadium out east. That is by far the best, one of the best. I shouldn't, disregard Ottawa, Saskatchewan, and Winnipeg, but it is one of the best markets. Like, it packed 20,000 for Touchdown Atlantic. I mean, I would love to see you guys have a team there as well. You mentioned, Thomas, I got to go back to your comment about Steph Labbe and, watching your intro video too. And I know a lot of people on this call obviously haven't watched the pitch for Project 8. It's so phenomenal. And it starts off with basically every huge name football player in our country explaining why we need a domestic league for women. And you're looking at this team and you're like, you just won gold at the Olympics. This makes so much sense, for God's sakes. But Thomas, having these females, and I know Christine Sinclair is considered a brand ambassador for Project 8 as well, but having the names behind this too, and someone like Diana at the helm, how much does that mean to this project?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. I think, that group brings credibility to anything and everything that we do on the sports side. And I think it really speaks to how important this project is for this country. And when you have, to your point, the gold medal winning team saying, we need more. Like, it's great that we won. Now we need more if we want to continue winning. I think it really speaks to how important this is for the athletes.
And Diana, from your perspective, obviously you still have close relationships with these women. I mean, when you told them about this idea and kind of, hey, can you lend your support to it? What was their reaction?
Yes. And it's current players, it's past players. Like, we all know this needs to happen. We all want to be a part of it. I think, like everyone else, the first questions are, well, how's it going to work? We're a big country, population dispersed, pro leagues in soccer haven't worked in the past in Canada. And then you talk through the plan and you show where the money's coming from. And then it just becomes pure excitement. I think I can't wait to start getting some of those current players back. And I'm really excited too, in being able to have, there's dozens of women's national team alumni who are either working in soccer or not right now, and connecting them to clubs and being a part of continuing to build the game is, I think it's something we're all really excited about.
This is an audience question again. Will Diana Matheson come out of retirement to play in this new league?
That's a great question.
I'm just kidding. I made that up.
Did you?
I did. But I do want to know. I think you should come out. Come on. You're all healed up from surgery, ready to go.
I limped through the last few years of my career, and my body's a bit of a mess. I played for the first time through this UEFA class. They always do a pickup game, and I played once, and I did my calf after about 17 minutes. So I maybe have 15 minutes in me for an opening game.
Okay, let's get back to a serious question. And, you speak about getting some of those players back. If you think about all the leagues currently around the world, and, you've got huge clubs over in England, for example, from the Premier League, and even from, you go to, I can't name all the leagues off the top of my head. I'm Raptors oriented right now. But even like a Juve and all that. And they're now running women's programs. And then you have the NWSL as well. Who plays in Project 8, in your opinion? Are we going to see some of the bigger names stay home, do you think, if this league is available?
Yeah, that's absolutely the plan going in. I think there's a few things. A, we want to build out designated player salaries to make sure there's at least one Canadian women's national team player per team. We know that having star players that fans recognize, are a huge part of this. There are 130 Canadian women playing professionally abroad right now on pro contracts. And that number was actually 110 before we announced Project 8. And then it jumped. It was actually a really cool thing to see already. So we're aiming to bring at least half of them home. We're going to allow up to 7 international players per team. So have a really solid core of experienced world-class professional players on these teams. And then we know, again, we have the 3rd largest player pool. There's hundreds of kids coming out of universities every year. Our youth pathways are incredible. There's probably 24 kids already that are ready to play in this league. So it's off the bat, there's these massive clubs abroad. They're pouring in money. The US has really exponentially grown in the last few years. So Canada's behind for sure, but the reality is that we're not that far behind that we can't jump into the market and start to compete. We can compete on average player salary from day one. We get to centralize sponsorships and media because we're starting from scratch to really drive growth in the long run. And we can be the 6th or 7th best women's league in the world from day one, and then look to grow from there.
I think you can be top 3. But again, too, I believe in you very much. So this is exactly what it is. Thomas, when Diana's explaining there and, the youth program, and that's always been something too, if you look at really with the exception of hockey, I mean, grassroots, sport in Canada in general really needs an upheaval, especially when it comes to soccer. What steps are you guys taking to ensure that this is transferred over to the youth too?
Absolutely, yeah. It's definitely one of the things that it was sort of a foundational piece of the work that we did was, how do we make sure that as we're building, the top of the pyramid, we're also building those pathways. We have engaged Rian Wilkinson to work on player pathways in the short term. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but
you can say anything. It's a safe space here. There's no one else on it.
Not going into the internet. Yeah, it's fine.
No.
So she's been looking at, how do we optimize those pathways. We're going to be working really closely with youth sport, with local clubs, and I think, when we look at the groups that are coming forward and looking to participate in this league, we are seeing sort of a connection between the groups that want to have a pro team and the grassroots. And I look to Calgary Foothills as a great example of, they have, call it 3/4 of the pyramid, and they need a pro team. So that's what they're doing, and they're going to go get one.
All right, I got to get to some of these audience questions because they're coming in, they're really hot at this point. So I got to scroll back in my phone a little bit here. Okay, so this might be a touchy subject, but how do you see this league working with Canada's soccer, the infrastructure, which can be very male focused and obviously a lot of media attention right now? But you said too, there's a really important date coming up with Canada Soccer. So how does this work together?
Yeah, Canada Soccer is a huge piece of this, and we've been really lucky to be working closely with Bria Carr-Harris. She's the head of women's professional soccer for Canada Soccer. And we're working closely with her. She did a ton of research last year to talk to stakeholders across the country to see, what is the route forward for women's professional soccer, and what we put together at Project 8 really closely matched Bria's work. So that was great. There's, everything, but there's particular things where we work closer, coaching education, referees, some things around the X's and O's of the game really go through Canada Soccer. But it's like everyone else in the landscape. We want to work collaboratively and build this thing. Like, everyone wants this league to happen. So it's just a matter of communicating and keeping the doors open. But it's, in terms of the structures being set up, a little more for men's soccer, that's the reality, because to this point, we've only built men's professional soccer. So there's things in Canada Soccer's governance where the men's pro leagues and teams actually have 25% of the voting power at AGMs for Canada Soccer. So in decision-making for Canada Soccer, where it should be 50-50 because the men's game was there first. It's a little skewed to the men. So even things, this league existing is giving more of a women's voice at the highest level, which is only going to be a good thing.
I can't keep up with these questions. There's so many coming in now. It's fantastic. Let's see here. Okay, Thomas, I'll go with this one first. We got a couple investor questions here. So how can an individual become, or how can individuals become investors? I mean, it's so vital to Canadian women to show their support in addition to corporate support. So how would you do it individually?
Absolutely. So, I mean, if you go to our website, project8.ca, there is a little tab there where you can, if you're interested in investing, you can send us a message. And we aren't doing any big capital raises at the league level, but all of our teams are interested in raising capital, and we really like the idea of building investor groups and being more inclusive in terms of how we build ownership at the team level. So what we will do is, if you reach out to us, we'll connect you with whoever we need to connect you with at the team level, at the community level, to make sure that you can be a part of your local team.
They're very prompt with their responses, by the way. So, I mean, a lot of people say, oh, go to the website, and then you never hear back. These guys are legit. Okay, Diana. So if we would like to become a part of an ownership group and we are interested, how do we go about doing that? I'm assuming it's somewhat of the same answer, but let's give it again.
Yeah, I think same answer. And I think at this point, like there's you can get involved now, you can get involved in a year is kind of the answer. We're looking for the owners now who either have deep enough pockets, they want to build this thing, own it, or bring their friends to the table, own it. Or if you don't have those deep pockets, maybe you're the type of person who has some expertise and they want to help build, run an ownership group in a market. If you're neither one of those things, but you live in a city that, the rights to that city have been sold, we'll attach you to that ownership group and you can invest in that team once it's up and running. So if you want to buy and build, get to us now. If you want to invest a bit later, we'll connect you to the team that's on the ground. So you got a few options. And if you want to do none of those things, then just, like, follow, buy the t-shirt, tell your friends.
And if you do end up purchasing a team on this Zoom call today,
Yes.
Diana, I, and Thomas will throw you a personal party. All three of us will attend with a lot of our special friends. Are we allowed to bribe people on this Zoom call?
I think you just did.
I mean, there are no rules, right? Okay, Thomas, I'm going to give you this one now. How will the increased inclusion of women in sport influence the future sport management, perhaps to be more caring for sustainability, environmental impact?
Yeah, it's funny. When we started this project, we really focused in on, gender equity as sort of like the ESG pillar that we were going to focus on. And it's amazing how quickly sustainability has become a key piece of the work that we're doing as well. I think, consumers are just becoming more conscious of, the impact that the brands that they follow have. And it's pervasive, right? It's not just, gender equity. It's not just inclusion. It's everything. It's is this, company, or is this brand, or is this, league positively impacting the world or not? And I think, in what we're doing, everything that we're doing is with the goal of positively impacting the world. And I think, it's just going to get more important.
All right, this one's coming in hot to you, Diana Matheson. What do you feel needs to happen in terms of education in Canada to ensure that you have a solid group of women who can be integrated throughout the project of building more jobs in soccer, when historically there have been less opportunities in soccer, such as coaches, team managers, etc.? And this is perfect because you actually said when you retired, there were no jobs for you here.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it a little bit depends on the role. I think for soccer specific things, coaching, we have a certain number of Canadian women coaches that are ready today with professional experience. I think we'll also have to import perhaps international talent on the coaching side, because we also have, only so many women with professional experience because we haven't had the jobs. Referees as well. We only have so many women referees with pro experience, so we're really going to have to grow that pool. For non-soccer specific jobs like the back office, the presidents, the GMs, the marketing managers, my experience so far is there are so many women in business, whether in sport or not, that are itching to be a part of women's pro sport, that absolutely have experience in either men's sport or in high-level business across this country. And we aim to attract as many of those women and other people to be a part of this project. Because the reality is there has been nowhere to work in women's pro sport in this country. And we're going to be hiring. So we're going to aim to poach as much talent as we can. Like I know TFC had a program, Toronto FC had a program last year where they created a position to encourage more women to be in sport. And I think it was one role people were applying for, and 500 women applied for this one role. So we know the people are out there, and we're going to just make the jobs for them.
Well, you look at it, you brought one preseason WNBA game to Toronto and boom, whole thing sold out. It's the middle of summer. Like, I don't know what else type of proof we need at this point. I have a money question. Ding, 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 ding. I don't know if you're allowed to answer any of these, but what is the estimated cost to buy and build one team? Also, is FDI allowed? I'm not a business pro, but I think was that foreign? It's got to be foreign something, foreign direct investment. Do we anyone know? Yeah, Thomas, yeah, you're nodding your head. So anyways, I don't know what you can reveal financially, but just in terms, there's some interest here. So yeah, we might have a potential team owner. That's what I'm saying.
Tom, you want that one or I'll go?
Go ahead.
Yeah, we can give numbers. I think we've shared them pretty, I think publicly already. So we're selling teams franchise fees $1 million. That gets you the rights to own and operate a team in your market. It's a pretty good deal. And then the total invested capital necessary to get this thing up and running and through the first 5 seasons to your break even is about 8 to 10 million. So your operating costs are, about 4 million a year to start. That's exclusive of infrastructure. So your stadiums where we're playing are a unique piece that's different in every city. Those are kind of the ballparks of numbers we're looking at. And then I feel like this is a bit of a business crowd, so I'll throw some more at you. The revenue streams we have in women's soccer in Canada, you're about 40% ticket sales and game day operations. And we've been pretty conservative. We think our model has an average of 3,700 average attendance per game. That's lower than what NWSL did 10 years ago when they started, lower than CPL. So we think we're conservative there. And sponsorship's another 40%. And that is the huge lever that we can pull right now in women's sport in Canada. And in our conversation so far, I can tell you there are Canadian companies out there looking to invest in women's professional sport. And it's also the fastest growing revenue stream. So it's only going to increase the next number of years, especially again, with companies like Canadian Tire coming out and saying with their women's sport initiative, I'm going to invest 50% of our sponsorship money in women's sport. If more companies follow in the path and the example of Canadian Tire, that revenue stream is just going to keep growing for women's sport and is going to be the fuel that drives this whole thing.
I can't tell you either. And again, too, I feel like I'm a total salesperson for Project 8 at this moment, but I can't even tell you to get in on the ground floor, though, of things like this. I mean, look at anything in 10, 20, 30 years time. I mean, NFL is like $1 billion. I get it, too. But even in terms of what a WNBA franchise is worth these days, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. Thomas, I don't know if sorry, I was going to add too. I mean, that sports or the sport business, it is like your year-over-year revenues and profits are one thing. It's the growing valuation of the asset is where the return is, and women's sport has been shown now that it's no different than men's. Like 5 years ago, if we were trying to build this, the sales pitch, it's the right thing to do. Now we get to say, yeah, it's the right thing to do, but you can buy a team now for $1 million, and in 10 years, this product is going to be worth $40 million. And we're seeing that in the NWSL now. I would even say from a broadcasting perspective too, it was fascinating watching the numbers on March Madness, men versus women. Go and look at them. Go look at your national title game between Iowa and LSU. I mean, it's just Iowa State, my bad for any like super sports fans up there. But I'm just saying like it's, no, it was Iowa. What am I thinking about? Anyways, doesn't matter. All I'm saying is that their ratings outdid the men. Like it's just, I mean, the product is just, the value of it is so high. Thomas, I don't know if you can answer the question. Is FDI allowed at this point, or are we just staying within Canada?
Yeah, we're looking at foreign investment for sure. We've had a couple of conversations with some of the major clubs globally about coming into this market. And I think on that point, it's important to sort of reiterate that soccer is a global product in a way that even, the NFL, to your point, you have billion-dollar franchises, but, it's still very, very much an American-centric market that they're looking at. And we can build this internationally, right? And there's no reason for us at this stage to think that a Canadian club can't be the next, the women's version of, the Arsenal, the PSG, or the Real Madrid at this stage where the game is globally.
Thomas, soccer knowledge now, right, Dee? This has gone from 0 to 100. I'm impressed, my friends. I had asked too, what type of facilities are you focusing on? So this is an interesting question too. And we spoke about, focusing on areas that already have something built, like in terms of capacity, would it be a bigger venue that you hope to sell out, or maybe a smaller stadium at this point?
Yeah, great question. Ideally for us, the 6,000 to 8,000 seat stadium is the perfect size to launch this league, soccer specific, ideally. One of the things we've seen in sport, and specifically in the NWSL, if we're averaging 4,000 or 5,000 fans in the first season, but you're in a 20,000, 30,000 seat stadium, you lose part of the atmosphere, you lose the game day experience, doesn't look as good on broadcast, where, you go to the sport game, not just because you love that sport, it's for the whole experience on the day. It's for the community, it's for the crowd, and especially in soccer, right? Like there's something magical about a soccer crowd and the drums and the chants and all these things. And we want to build that as best we can in Canada. We also have to be realistic in Canada with the stadiums we do have. So the Canadian Premier League has done an incredible job building small size venues. And I think we'll be able to share those in several markets. I think other markets, we're going to have to use what's there, whether that's BC Place in Vancouver, maybe a Saputo Stadium, soccer specific on grass in Montreal. Every market's different. So we might have to have some solutions that are shorter term, with a longer term vision to build, or some cases, something's there in the short term. Some cases it's going to be the ideal fit in 5 years.
I feel bad that I don't even know it, but Thomas, what is the timeline of the season? Just being in Canada, I find that always very interesting.
Absolutely, yeah. So we're going April to October. We're going to be starting the season with a festival on the West Coast, understanding that, this year is maybe an exception. You can't always play an outdoor sport at the beginning of April in Ontario. So yeah,
in Ontario, that's not our problem market, I don't think. Yeah. Maybe
it's Saskatoon.
Yeah, Winnipeg might have a problem. Yeah.
Sorry to burst your bubble there, guys.
Yeah. So, and then there will be playoffs. It's North American sport, so and that'll be October to November.
And then, have you figured out a playoff structure? I know I'm getting into really hard details now, but playoff structure, or have you named the trophy the Diana Matheson Trophy? Is there any plans like that?
Yeah, I'm naming all the trophies after myself. Yeah, this is our. I don't know, Tom. We haven't really talked about our playoff structure. Should we tell Kate what we're thinking? She can give us feedback.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we're thinking this is what we got. So we're 8 teams to start. So we're going to have 6 teams make the playoffs, because NWSL did 4 and that was too few. You have to play for something end of season, and 8's too many. What's the point? So we're going to do the top 3 teams from each region, East and West, qualify. Top ones go straight to the semi, and then there's a playoff for the other semi. So you're really driving those regional rivals, your semifinal in conference, and then you've always got an East for West final. Although I would love to fit in, your classic Champions League home and away style soccer competition, but I haven't figured out where to fit that in yet. But my dream is we will be able to.
One step at a time, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, I love this plan. I must ask, so in terms of where you guys are currently at, obviously you've grown so much since the idea came about and you put pen to paper, but what is the biggest challenge right now? Thomas, I'll go with you. Is it filling out the teams? Is it grabbing more investors? Like, what is your number one goal right now?
Number one goal is definitely finding our teams across the country. And I think, in terms of the biggest challenge, it's really just the balance of, building the airplane as we fly it. And, we're actively, engaged with, groups across the country, and we're meeting new groups every day, and we're working on building out sponsorship and how that's going to, continue to come together. And at the same time, we're building our team. We recently, hired a director of marketing. We put a post out last week for a social media specialist. So it's sort of doing those two things at once, where we're building the business and we're building the business.
Yeah, and we did start off by saying we were building the boat while we were sailing, but then Air Canada came on board, so we made the company decision to change the metaphor.
That's just a good marketing decision right there. I mentioned off the top that we'd mentioned a little bit more about this, but Diana, when you and I have had this conversation in past, companies that say, I want to invest in women, I want to help women, but then when you're like, okay, write the check, it just doesn't happen. Like, it's exhausting at times to continually fight this fight. But, obviously you've already got some great partners too. But what would you say to a company that says, I want to invest, but then to push them to actually take action?
Yeah, Tom, I'd love to hear your answer on this one too. I think so far the things I've seen is lots of companies, again, want to be involved. It's the companies, in my experience, they're more discovery calls than sales calls. When you have the conversation, you can tell if they're in or not. And then more often than not, are there women in decision-making roles or men that tend to have daughters or sisters or raised by a single mother? Like, reality, it's more often those people who are like, let's do it, and able to shop it upstairs. And then it's whether that company is in a position where they're able to make that decision relatively quickly, because we're moving fast, and if it fits their strategic goals. So it's a little bit, are there the people in the company pushing it, and then are the people upstairs set up to be able to make that decision? So it's a little, that's kind of a boring answer. And I heard Kim and Ashley from Canadian Tire speak of this really well earlier this week. And in their push, they were trying to get in women's sport for like 2 years before this. Project 8 had knocked on their door last fall, and they're like, we're not sure we can sell it upstairs. And they created a larger vision that just didn't just include Project 8. It included investing equitably in sport, women's sport in Canada. And then that was able to get it across the line. So there's something about, creating that vision too, that bigger picture, that's selling it, I think, up in companies versus being like, oh, that thing's great, let's do it. It's no, we're doing this. And that's part of it.
And Tom, from your vantage point, same answer. I know, obviously, being a male trying to push women's sports, I keep saying it's critically important to what everyone's trying to do right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I'm not going to say any names, but we met with one company that showed us a 60-page deck on all of the reasons why they needed to invest in women's sport. And at the end of the day, they said no.
What?
And and I think, it really exemplifies for me how incredible the companies are that are aligning behind us. And I really I feel like I need to shout out for, CIBC, for Air Canada, for Canadian Tire, because, they're leaders. And they're not just leaders in their industries, they're leaders in our country and in moving our country towards gender equity. And I think, if you're a business that's like, I really want to invest in women's sport, but I'm not going to, or you just have to ask yourself, do you want your company to be a leader in this country, to be a leader globally? And, if the answer is yes, then this is where you need to be. And it doesn't need to be with us. But, this is the future, and it's 51% of the population.
Question. This is a very specific one here. When I mean specific, I mean specific. Size of stadium and access to urban center. Would your group work or consider Lamport Stadium? Downtown and fun. It's like a pitch for Lamport. I love this. So many kids in the downtown area have access to this area, particularly girls. Some of the best is highlighted. Best up-and-coming girls, ladies soccer right there. Go High Park FC. Shout out to High Park FC. But anyways, would a stadium like Lamport, and Lamport's a blast. I've been before. I've had a great time. I actually watched rugby there. But would that be a consideration?
Yes, listen, my dream, and I've told everyone that's ever asked about Toronto, I'm like, my dream personally is Lamport for all the reasons that were just said. Lamport also is, I mean, people braver than us have tried to look into Lamport. I think it needs renovations. Even, you know, my take, if you leave those stands that are there the same, you still have to add capacity on the sides, and you would have to build out, you know, locker rooms, offices specific for your pro team. There's nothing that exists now that would meet the needs of the team. So you'd have to build, you'd have to renovate. So then I think you're into the city politics and all the other things. So there's definitely conversations going on, and with FIFA 2026 coming, there's some funding associated with that. So we can see if any balls finally get moving. If not, there are other options in Toronto, but it's definitely on a list of a possibility there for me too. I think one of the problems though, Lamport, it is such a community field, and it's so heavily used by many people, including rec leagues, that if you did do that, you'd want to replace that facility somewhere else too. So I think you'd have to do it while adding another recreational facility somewhere, because you don't want to take it away from the community either.
So the short answer is maybe. All right, Thomas. Yeah, we're gonna just say yes. Screw it. Needless to say, Thomas, this is a good one. Let's see. What keeps you up at night, and what keeps you optimistic about the future of this league? So good and bad.
I mean, like, we have continued. We built the plan over the summer, and you know, obviously, it's a dynamic project that we're building, but it really has continued to progress. And I think that the momentum that we're seeing in the market is positive. And, you know, as Diana hinted, maybe there will be another announcement in the next couple of weeks. I think, you know, as starting any business, like, you know, there are things that will keep you up at night. You know, your cash flow month to month is always something to be cognizant of. But overall, I think, you know, we built a vision, and we're just seeing it through, and I sleep pretty well. In terms of what keeps me optimistic, I think it's the responses that we get from, you know, people in the community. It's the number of people who reach out to us, you know, on an ongoing basis, just saying like, this is so monumental for me, for my kids, for you know, for this society and for this country. And there's a huge, not just appetite, but like, you know, there's so much desire to see this through across the country. And I think, you know, it's just a matter of time. It was just a matter of time.
You know, we always say this too, and we even look at like stars of our generation and who they looked up to. I mean, you always say like Christine Sinclair wears 12 because of Roberto Alomar, not because of a woman. So this just flat out needs to change. Diana, how can governments at all levels help this?
Great question. Do you think that's a question from a person in government?
I don't know, but if I had to take a guess, yes.
Yeah, great question. And please reach out. We'd love to chat and pick your brain. I think, you know, Tom and I have been working hard to build relationships at the federal level. I think absolutely we're circle background to stadiums and facilities. I think there's different ministries, sport, tourism, infrastructure, etc. That we'd love to get to a point where we can get some investment there. And I think stadiums always come with that, right? And can it be provincial and municipal? I think the more people, I mean, we think we've got here a product that's a win in most circles. You know, we're bringing an equitable sport product into market that we think is going to have a benefit, you know, on your provinces, in your cities. So we especially connecting our teams to those local governments and building those relationships is really important. And then for us, building them out at the federal level.
Super biased, but you can have better people running this either. Thomas, last question to you, my friend. We're doing this exact same Zoom call in 10 years' time. Where is Project 8?
That's a great question. I mean, Diana and I talk a lot about, you know, our vision for Project 8 as separate from the league. And I think, you know, if we're talking about where is this league, you know, the league is the apex of Canadian sport in 10 years is where I see this. I think that What we will have done at that point is we will have proven the value of women's sport, and we will have demonstrated that the market here is not, it's not just necessary. It's actually it's been a really great investment for everyone who's chosen to be involved. And this is the league that, gets Canadians going.
Tom, Diana, thank you so much. I know we've spoken before, but just to go a little more into detail and figure out where this league's going and what you guys have already built, congratulations. And it's been a pleasure chatting with both of you. Joseph?
Thanks, Kate. Diana, Thomas, and Kate, thank you so much for sharing your vision and your thoughts with our audience today. I'm excited. I can't wait to line up at Lamport Stadium for my season's tickets with my kids. So I'm really looking forward to that time. Your commitment to gender equality in sport is incredibly inspiring, and I think all of us in the audience look forward to cheering for these teams when the league launches in just a couple of years' time. From my perspective, and I think the audience as well, we took away a number of themes. Number one, very impressed by the clear roadmap and strategy that you discussed today. In fact, the dean of the Smith School of Business at Queen's will be at our podium in just a couple of weeks, and I imagine she was listening today, watching today very, very proudly. Second, the infusion of diversity directly into the ownership discussion I found pretty refreshing. The fact that it's kind of the conversations happening there at the ground floor is a new and maybe long overdue. And then third, this commitment to ESG that goes beyond D&I and really kind of into sustainability as well is notable, and again, super refreshing. Canadian Club's vision is to be the podium of choice for relevant and provocative conversations, connecting our business community and promoting an inclusive and prosperous Canada. We aim to achieve this vision at every event, and today certainly exemplified, I think, exactly that. So thank you again for being part of our discussion today, and thank you as well to Canadians' entire support of our conversation today. Audience, we hope that you might be able to join us on April 26th for our panel conversation on CEO activism, and then on May 2nd, when we will host the Premier of the Yukon Territory, the Honorable Raj Pillai. Thank you again to everyone, and especially to our guests, for spending your lunch hour with us today. Enjoy the spring. Spring has sprung, at least here in Toronto, and we look forward to seeing everyone again very, very soon. Thank you.